Hello and welcome to my video. I'm going to be making grape pies from the Plain Delight cookbook. These are meat pies or mince pies as they say in the UK. To start, I am washing my hands. This is necessary to do before you start cooking. Then I am filling up a pot with water to start parboiling the meat. I'm using about 1 pound of ground beef. The reason we are boiling it is to reduce the fat content. I am putting it into non-boiling water and then I will bring it to a boil and boil it for around 5 minutes. This is not to cook the beef all the way through. It is just to get all the fats and juices out of there so we do not end up with a soggy pie. As you can see, now I am flouring my surface and I'm going to start rolling out my pie crust. I used store-bought crust, but I rolled it out to get a thinner pie crust. The thinner it is, the crispier I figured it would get. Nobody likes a doughy pie. I made that face because I put a little bit too much flour down. Now I am taking the pie crust and putting it into a pie dish. You can use a round pie dish, a rectangular pie dish, a square pie dish, anything that you would like to do. I am using a rectangular pie dish. The reason I am using a rectangular shaped dish is because that is what the people used to do in the medieval times. They did this to represent the birth of our Savior. The shape represents the cradle. But don't worry, the pie crust doesn't have to look perfect. I think it looks better with a little rustic touch. As you can see, I am now draining the meat from the water, which extracted most of the fat and juices. I'm warning you now, it gets a little bit steamy and it doesn't smell the best. Also, it doesn't look that appetizing. Make sure you give it an extra good drain though, because you don't want any of those fat juices or extra water into the pie to make it soggy. I chose to cut most of the meat up with a knife so that we are not left with big chunks. If you're patient, unlike myself, you could do this with your hands. But I just couldn't wait. After the meat has been cut up, I am going to be adding 1/4 of a cup of red wine and 1/4 of a cup of red wine vinegar. Meat pies always have some type of alcohol in them, whether it's wine or bourbon. Next goes in 1/4 of a cup of currants and 1/4 of a cup of dates. Currants are just like raisins, and the dates were optional, but I chose to add them because I had them in my cupboard and I really like them. In goes 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 1/8 of a teaspoon of ginger. I love ginger, so if I made this again, I would add a little more. But I wanted to make it just how the recipe had it, since this is for a school project. Now I add in 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg and 1/8 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. Here, I am using whole peppercorns and whole cloves. I ground them up and added them in. I used about 3 peppercorns and 2 cloves. Cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg are very significant in meat pies. These were the 3 gifts given to Christ at his birth by the Magi. These pies are made around Christmas time every year in the UK because a lot of the spices had to do with Jesus being born. At this time, you can also add saffron or any other spices like cumin. I chose not to because I couldn't find saffron anywhere in my local supermarkets, but if you have it, feel free to use it. Saffron was used to add color to dishes because they did not have easy access to colorful vegetables. After all the ingredients and spices are added in, I mix them together. This will move around all the flavors and get everything combined. After all the ingredients and spices are added and mixed together, I start trimming the chicken. I trim off the extra fat just because we had to parboil the meat to get out the fat, so I assumed it would be good to get the fat off the chicken. Then I cut the chicken into bite-sized pieces. The recipe called for 2 to 3 pounds, but I only needed about 3/4 of a large breast. The breast probably weighed around 1 to 1.5 pounds. To assemble the pie, I am going to be using half the meat mixture in the bottom of the pie. As you can see, that spoon wasn't working so well, so I went and grabbed another one. I am going to be adding chicken on the top of the beef. I had to cut my chicken into smaller pieces because they weren't bite-sized. You're going to lay the chicken all over the top of the beef so it is covering most of the beef mixture. Pour the rest of the meat mixture on top of the chicken. Add egg yolks to the top of that. I used around 6 eggs, and I just cut the yolks in half so they fit better into my pie. I am adding the top of the crust and just cutting off the extra dough. Again, this doesn't have to look perfect. We are going for flavor rather than appearance. As you can see, I am just peeling off the excess dough and tucking in the corners. Tucking in the corners will help it not bubble over and give it that rustic look. Using a brush, I am going to brush on an egg white to the top of the crust. This will keep it golden brown and it will make it look delicious. Also, I am cutting slits in the top to let the heat escape and so the pie doesn't explode. Put the pie into the oven at 350 degrees for 70 minutes. Our oven said 300 because it is a convection oven. To be honest, I wasn't sure how I was going to like the pie. But it did smell good throughout the whole cooking process, so I was really eager to try it. I took a big bite of the pie and I thought it was delicious. My sister loved it too. Even though this project was tough and took a lot of time to make, I really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed too. Thanks for watching. Bye!